I'm recording this in a location I can't disclose. I've moved 3 times in the past year, changed my phone number twice, and I don't use my real name anymore. If you're watching this, it means I've decided the risk is worth it. Someone needs to know what's really happening in our national parks. Someone needs to understand why people disappear without a trace, why search and rescue teams find nothing, and why the government doesn't want you asking questions. My name used to be on a federal employee roster. I worked as a park ranger for the National Park Service for 4 years, stationed primarily at North Cascades National Park in Washington State. It's one of the most remote, least visited parks in the system. Over 500,000 acres of wilderness, most of it completely inaccessible except on foot. When I started the job, I thought it would be about conservation, helping hikers, protecting wildlife. I had no idea what I was actually signing up for. Before I go any further, I need you to do something for me. If you want to hear what I'm about to tell you, if you want to know the truth about what's happening out there, hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. I'm not trying to build an audience. I'm trying to build a record. If something happens to me, this needs to exist somewhere. So please, subscribe, and let me tell you what they don't want you to know. I was 26 when I got hired. Fresh out of a natural resources degree, idealistic, excited to spend my days in the backcountry. The training was standard. Wilderness first aid, search and rescue protocols, wildlife management, visitor services. But there were other briefings too. Ones that weren't in any manual. They happened in closed-door sessions with senior rangers, and occasionally with people who didn't wear uniforms, people who introduced themselves with first names only and never explained who they worked for. These briefings covered what they called anomalous incidents. People who went missing under circumstances that didn't fit normal patterns. The instructions were clear and repeated often. If we encountered certain types of disappearances, we were to follow specific protocols. Document minimally. Search briefly. Report through particular channels. And most importantly, don't speculate. Don't theorize. Don't discuss. At first, I thought it was about liability. The Park Service gets sued constantly by families who lose someone in the wilderness. I figured they were just protecting themselves legally. But the more I worked, the more I realized it was something else. There were patterns in the disappearances that made no sense. People vanishing from heavily trafficked trails in broad daylight. Experienced outdoorsmen found miles away from where they should have been, with no explanation for how they got there. Children disappearing and reappearing days later, unable to remember what happened, speaking in confused fragments about the tall man or the ones watching from the trees. And then there were the ones who were never found at all, just gone. Personal items, sometimes discovered arranged in ways that defied explanation. Shoes placed neatly side by side. Backpacks opened and contents spread out in patterns. Clothing folded. Nobody talks about that part. It doesn't make it into the official reports. I worked there for 3 years before it happened. 3 years of routine patrols, helping lost hikers, dealing with the occasional bear encounter. I'd heard the stories from older rangers. Late-night conversations around campfires where they'd talk in low voices about things they'd seen or heard. Figures moving through the trees that were too large, too fast. Vocalizations that didn't match any known animal. Areas of the park that felt wrong. Places where even experienced rangers didn't like to go alone. I dismissed most of it. People see what they want to see in the wilderness. Shadows become monsters. Elk calls become screams. The mind fills and blanks with fears. But I hadn't experienced it myself, so I remained skeptical. Until October 14th of last year. It started with a radio call just after sunset. I was at the ranger station finishing paperwork when the call came through. Dispatch said they'd received multiple reports of unusual sounds near the Thunder Creek Trail, about 8 miles into the backcountry. The description was vague. Hikers claimed to have heard what sounded like vocalizations, almost human but not quite, echoing through the valley. 2 groups had turned back early because of it. Thunder Creek Trail has a history. If you research the missing persons cases in North Cascades, a disproportionate number cluster around that area. 5 documented disappearances in the last 40 years, 3 of them in the last decade. It's not the most dangerous terrain. It's not particularly isolated compared to other trails. But something about that drainage has always felt off. I was the only ranger on duty. My supervisor, a guy named Marcus, who'd been with the Park Service for 20 years, told me to do a welfare check. He was specific about the protocol. Hike in, make visual contact with any remaining hikers. Advise them to leave the area before dark. Document findings, return. Nothing unusual. Except when he handed me the radio. He looked at me in a way I'd never seen before. Stay on the trail, he said. And if you see anything that doesn't feel right, you turn around immediately. You don't investigate. You don't get curious. You come back. Understood? I told him I understood. I didn't. Not yet. The hike in was quiet. Too quiet. It was that time of year when the tourist season had ended, but winter hadn't quite arrived. The forest felt empty. No bird calls. No insects. Just the sound of my boots on the trail and my own breathing. The light was fading fast, that blue twilight that makes everything look surreal. About 6 miles in, I found them. The first set of items. A backpack, bright red, sitting in the middle of the trail. It was upright, leaning against a rock like someone had carefully positioned it there. Next to it were hiking boots. A pair of women's boots, size 7 or 8, placed perfectly parallel to each other. 30 feet further up the trail, a fleece jacket, folded. My training kicked in. I documented the scene with my camera, checked for any signs of struggle or animal activity, then radioed it in. Marcus's voice came back immediately, tight and controlled. Describe exactly what you see. I did. When I finished, there was a long pause. Are the boots worn? I looked closer. Yes. The treads are dirty. These have been used. Another pause. And the items are arranged? Yes. Deliberately. I heard him talking to someone in the background, voices too low to make out. When he came back, his tone had changed. I need you to mark the location on your GPS and return to the station immediately. What about the hiker? Someone could be in trouble out here. Mark it and return. That's a direct order. I should have listened. That's what I tell myself now. I should have turned around, hiked back, filed my report, and let someone else deal with it. But I didn't. Because standing there, looking at those carefully arranged items, I felt something I'd never felt before in all my time in the wilderness. I felt watched. I looked up from the backpack and into the tree line. The forest had gone completely still. And then I saw it, just for a second, between 2 massive Douglas firs about 50 yards off the trail. A shape. Tall. Impossibly tall. Broad shoulders tapering to a narrower waist. Covered in dark brown fur that seemed to absorb the fading light. It didn't move. It just stood there, watching me. My heart was hammering. Every rational part of my brain was screaming at me to run, to grab my radio, to do something. But I couldn't move. We stayed like that for what felt like minutes, but was probably only seconds. And then it did something that changed everything. It turned. Slowly. Deliberately. And it walked deeper into the forest. Not fleeing. Not hurrying. Just walking. And then it stopped and looked back at me. The gesture was unmistakable. It wanted me to follow. I don't know why I did it. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was 4 years of training about helping people in the wilderness, and some insane part of my brain thought this thing needed help. Maybe I was just too shocked to think clearly. But I stepped off the trail and followed. The creature moved through the forest, with an ease that shouldn't have been possible for something that size. It navigated around obstacles, ducked under branches, stepped over fallen logs. Every 30 seconds or so, it would stop and turn, making sure I was still behind it. It was leading me somewhere specific. We moved deeper into the drainage, away from any maintained trail. The forest grew denser. The light dimmer. I was violating every protocol I'd ever learned, but I kept going. After about 20 minutes, the terrain changed. We emerged into a clearing I'd never seen on any map, ringed by massive granite outcroppings that created natural walls. The creature stopped at the edge and didn't enter. Instead, it raised one enormous arm and pointed. I stepped into the clearing, and my legs almost gave out. The ground was covered with items. Dozens of them. Maybe more. Backpacks in various states of decay. Clothing. Camping equipment. Cameras. Shoes. Lots of shoes. All arranged in loose groups, organized by type or maybe by time. Some of the items looked recent. Others were clearly old, weathered by years of exposure. I recognized some of them. A blue backpack with a distinctive patch that had been in a missing persons bulletin from 2 years ago. A red jacket that belonged to a hiker who'd vanished in the spring. An old camera bag that matched the description from a case file I'd read during training. A disappearance from 1993. This was a collection. A deliberate, organized collection of personal belongings from people who had vanished in these mountains. People who were never found. People whose cases went cold. And in the center of it all, partially buried but still visible, were other things. Bones. Small ones mostly. I didn't look too closely. I turned around. The creature was still at the edge of the clearing, watching me. It hadn't come any closer. In the dim light, I could see more details now. The face was a nightmare blend of human and ape, with eyes that reflected what little light remained. But those eyes weren't vacant. They weren't the eyes of an animal. There was something behind them. Intelligence. Purpose. Sadness. It moved then, slowly, lowering itself into a crouch. It reached into the pile of items and pulled something out. A ranger badge. Old, tarnished, with a name I recognized. James Whitmore. He'd disappeared in 1987. It was a famous case in Park Service history. He'd gone on a solo patrol and never returned. They searched for weeks. Found nothing. The creature held the badge out to me, arm extended, like it was offering a gift. Or evidence. I took a step back, my hand instinctively going to my radio. The creature's head tilted, a gesture that was disturbingly human. And then it did something I still can't fully process. It looked up at the sky, which was now completely dark, stars beginning to emerge. It pointed up with one long finger. Then it pointed down at the collection of items. Then it pointed at me. The gesture was deliberate, intentional. It was trying to communicate something. And then it spoke. Or tried to. The sounds that came out were low and resonant, vibrating in my chest. But there were words in there. Broken, distorted, barely recognizable. But words nonetheless. Not them. The voice was like gravel sliding over stone. Taken sky watching. I need to stop here for a second. I need you to understand what I'm telling you. This creature, this thing that science says doesn't exist, was trying to warn me. It brought me to this place, showed me this evidence, and attempted to communicate something crucial. Comment below right now. Tell me what you think it was trying to say. What do you think taken means? What was watching from the sky? I need to know other people are seeing what I'm seeing here. After those words, the creature stepped back into the shadows. I wanted to follow, wanted to understand more, but my body finally caught up with my brain, and I realized the danger I was in. I was miles from the trail, in the dark, in a place that clearly had significance I didn't understand. I turned on my headlamp and started marking my path back. It took me 2 hours to find the main trail again. The creature didn't follow, or if it did, I never saw it. When I finally made it back to the ranger station, it was past midnight. Marcus was waiting, and he wasn't alone. There were 2 other people with him. A man and a woman, both in plain clothes, no identification visible. They sat me down and asked me to describe exactly what happened. I told them everything. The arranged items, the clearing, the collection, the creature. What it tried to tell me. When I finished, they exchanged looks I couldn't read. The woman spoke first. Her voice was calm, professional, empty of emotion. You need to understand something. What you saw tonight, what you think you saw, cannot be discussed with anyone. Not colleagues, not family, not friends. Do you understand? And the patterns are there if you look. Clustering around specific areas. Disappearances that spike during certain times of year. Items found arranged in ways that suggest intelligence. and reports, hundreds of reports going back decades, of large bipedal creatures seen in proximity to these incidents. But here's what I think happened in that clearing. I don't think Bigfoot, or whatever those creatures are, is responsible for the disappearances. I think they're witnesses. Maybe even protectors. That creature led me to that collection for a reason. It was trying to show me something. Not I did this. But look what's happening. Look what they're not telling you. The words it tried to speak haunt me. Taken. Sky. Watching. I've thought about those words every day since. Taken by what? What was in the sky? What was watching? And why would the government want to hide that so desperately? I have theories. None of them are comforting. Maybe there's something else out there, something that uses our national parks as hunting grounds, and Bigfoot is smart enough to stay out of its way. Maybe the creatures collect the items as evidence, the same way we would collect evidence of a crime. Maybe they've been trying to show us for decades, and we just keep dismissing them as myths. Or maybe the truth is worse. Maybe the government knows exactly what's happening and has decided that keeping it secret is more important than preventing it. Maybe they've made calculations about acceptable losses. Maybe they've decided that panic would be worse than death. I don't have proof. They took my documentation from that night. My photos, my GPS data, even my handwritten notes. All I have is my memory and that badge. I kept it. I shouldn't have. It's probably another federal crime. But I couldn't leave it there. It belonged to someone. Someone who deserved to be remembered. James Whitmore had a family. A wife and 2 kids who spent years wondering what happened to him. They never got closure. They never got answers. And now I know why. Because the answers are too big, too strange, too threatening to the narrative we've built about our world. I've moved that badge with me every time I've relocated. It sits in a drawer wrapped in cloth. Sometimes I take it out and look at it, wondering what James saw before he disappeared. Wondering if he met the same creature I did. Wondering if he was shown the same collection, adding his own items to it before, what? Before he was taken? By what? I sleep with my lights on now. I don't go into forests anymore. Not even city parks. Because once you know that we're not alone out there, once you understand that there are things sharing this planet with us that we don't acknowledge, don't study, don't even admit exist, you can't unknow it. You can't unfeel the weight of those eyes watching you. You can't unhear that gravelly voice trying so hard to form human words. The creature didn't hurt me. It had every opportunity. It could have killed me easily in that dark forest. But it didn't. It showed me something instead. It tried to warn me. And for that, I'm grateful. But I'm also terrified. Because if these creatures are trying to communicate with us, trying to show us evidence of something worse happening in our wildernesses, and our government is actively suppressing that communication, what does that mean? What are they protecting us from? Or what are they protecting? If you've watched this far, if you've heard what I'm saying, I need you to do something. Hit the like button, subscribe to this channel, and most importantly, comment below. Tell me if you've experienced anything similar. Tell me if you felt watched in the wilderness. Tell me if you've lost someone in a national park and the circumstances didn't make sense. Tell me if you've seen things you can't explain. I'm building a record. If enough of us speak up, maybe they can't silence all of us. Maybe someone with more resources, more courage, more access than me can take this further. Maybe we can get actual answers about what's happening out there. Or maybe this video will disappear. Maybe I'll disappear. I don't know. But I had to try. For James Whitmore and his family. For all the people whose items sit in that clearing, organized by some creature that understands loss better than we give it credit for. For everyone who's ever felt that something is watching from the trees and been told they're imagining things. They're not imagining things. I wasn't imagining things. And if you felt it too, you're not crazy. You're aware. And awareness, as terrifying as it is, might be the only thing that can change this. I still have nightmares about that clearing. About the creature's eyes. About the sound of it trying to speak. But mostly I have nightmares about what wasn't there. About the people those items belong to. About where they are now. About what took them. Because that's the real horror, isn't it? Not that Bigfoot exists. Not that there are creatures in our forests we don't understand. But that something else is out there too. Something that takes people and leaves no trace. Something that the most powerful government on Earth would rather keep secret than confront. That badge is still in my drawer. I look at it and I make a promise. I'm going to keep telling this story until someone listens. Until someone with the authority to do something actually does something. Until James Whitmore's family gets the truth, even if that truth is stranger and darker than anything they could have imagined. Subscribe, comment, share this if you dare. And if you're planning a trip to a national park, please be careful. Stay on marked trails. Don't go alone. And if you see something tall moving between the trees, something that shouldn't exist, don't follow it. Even if it seems to want to show you something. Because once you see what I saw, once you know what I know, there's no going back to normal. There's only living with the knowledge that we share this world with mysteries we're not allowed to solve. The government hid what Bigfoot showed me. But I'm done hiding it from you.